Happy Tuesday.
Hey, happy Tuesday. I almost bloated my ears with testing my friggin' microphone. Do you ever do that on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. No.
I do. And I just did, and I didn't realize the volume was all the way up. And I'm like, oh my God.
Look how gorgeous Marilyn red you are today.
Yeah, I decided I am wearing, oh God, but look at how pale I am. See, this is what winter does to me. Ugh.
Eh. Eh. No, you sound fine. You look great.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just trying to figure out the angle of my new backdrop here.
Oh.
Do you like it?
I do really like it a lot.
Awesome. I like it too.
Super funky. I was actually, of course, I just turned my ring light off completely. Look at that. I was actually going to switch positions where I am.
From missionary?
Yeah, us like heterosexual white people, right?
Yeah, you breeders.
Or not.
Or not.
Oh, God. Play that game you're talking about what's on your lap?
Yeah, I know. I was so excited. I got ready for it this morning, actually, and then look at me. I don't even have anything on my lap, but I can put something on my lap right now, so that's good.
What are you going to put on your lap?
Well, I could do that, or I could do what's on my chest today.
But if I'm supposed to guess what's on your lap, and you've got what's on your chest that I can see,
oh yeah,
your lap, how's that going to work?
Okay, I have something on my lap now.
Do you? Oh crap!
I do. Oh come on! You can't expect me to get ready for it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap! Now I need to get ready too.
I have something on my lap as well. Oh, and I just actually fixed my shirt and put it up to my shoulder, but now it's down on my lap again.
Okay, I'm not gonna guess what it was because I had an idea and I'm not gonna guess.
Well, okay. So, is what you have in your lap, is it?
It's not attached to my body.
Oh, fuck me. Is it phallic?
No.
Okay. It's not phallic shaped at all?
Not that I can think of, no.
Is it reading material?
No.
Is it something to do, is it actually, you know what? I'm just gonna ask this question. What color is it?
It's white.
It's white. Oh Lord. Is it a crystal of some sort?
Good question. No.
No.
I was thinking of a crystal, but no.
Oh man, this is difficult. It's white. Is it egg whites?
That's also accurate because that's basically all I eat is protein, but no.
No.
It's fluffy.
It's fluffy. Is it a slipper?
I don't wear slippers.
Okay, but you get cold, so maybe you should wear slippers.
Yeah. No.
Is it some sort of stuffy? It is. Okay. But I cannot guess what kind of stuffy it is because you have
what's white?
Teddy bear?
Yeah, but what kind of bear?
A polar bear.
Yes.
A polar bear. Oh my God, I got it. Let's see. Oh, let's look at the little foot. Oh, cute. Cute. I don't know if we have time for mine now because we've got to introduce our guest.
This is Iceberg, my first stuffed animal that my grandmother bought me when I was 7.
Seriously, wow.
And I've kept him my entire life.
He looks like he's in pretty good condition, actually.
Yeah, he's got a little hole in his foot, so I don't put him in the washer dryer, but he's mine. And then whenever I'm alone and I'm sad or having an anxiety episode, I always grab him and I hold him to my heart like my passed away dog because I didn't stuff my dog. So it's nice to have a polar bear.
You didn't taxidermy your dog?
No. My brother wanted to turn it into a ceiling fan from her 4 spokes, but we never had a chance to.
What? What? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he'd be in the hospital bed when he was sick with cancer, looking at my mom and be like, "Puppy turned the ceiling fan?" My mom was like, "No ceiling fan!" And it became like this little joke to create some humor. She would have been a nice rug or a nice ceiling fan though. She really would have been nice. She was beautiful. The perfect tone of chai tea, blondie, soft coated interior. Yeah, Yeah, she would have been a nice coat rack or a nice place to put, nice little bench.
Totally. A little small for a bench, but
No, she was 50 pounds. She was fine.
okay. Was she a Shih Tzu?
No, she was a purebred soft-coated Wheaten Terrier.
Oh, cute.
So, okay, do you have something on your lap or no?
Well, probably we'll do ours tomorrow for me because our guest is coming on any moment.
Okay.
I forget.
Please follow, subscribe, and check into our podcast. I know we sound like little nudniks, another little Yiddish word if I'm not, whatever. But anyways, we really, really appreciate your support. It's important for you to follow us on Instagram, to subscribe to us on YouTube, to download us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, Stitcher.
Yeah.
And you know what? Again, the podcasts, forget about the monetization part. It's important for us to keep getting the visibility so we can keep sharing content with you that also lights you up and makes you inspired. So at Getting Juicy, @getting_juicy on Instagram, @getting_juicy on Facebook, and then on YouTube, Getting Juicy with Rachel and Hero. Yeah, and soon a website. So that would be more helpful to everyone, that you can just go there and find all our information. Exactly. So, yeah, but without further ado, enough about us. Exactly. Like we're really interesting, but we're going to have episodes just about us. Today is about our guest, Jivana Heyman, who is the founder and the CEO of Accessible Yoga Teacher Training in the States. And Accessible Yoga is a form of teacher training and methodology that brings yoga practices to being more accessible, hence the name, to people and students that normally cannot access yoga in a traditional format, meaning through using it through chairs, beds, walls, other props that normally might be not thought of in traditional yoga class environments, including public classes, private classes, workshops, or retreats and trainings. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting, because when I think about the word accessible and I think about accessible yoga, I sort of just think that all yoga should be accessible. So, I mean, I understand, I kind of want to talk to them about a couple things, but I understand obviously where the terminology came from and make it accessible to those that it may not have been accessible before. Right. But I think about, some of the classes that, I would go to that are more advanced, or things or that shouldn't even be more advanced. And you're seeing somebody walk into a class and they're in a handstand, or walking across the freaking floor on their hands, or whatever it may be, just before class even starts. Right. Mm-hmm. So how inaccessible that feels for, I would say most people, how intimidating that is. Yeah, so I'm interested to kind of get his take on if there was multiple facets as to how he came across or how he came about this idea of, bringing this to everybody. Yes, and also what I want to touch on before he tunes in any second is that I actually was going to do his training before COVID hit, and I was planning to get him in Vancouver in a studio to host it so I could do it personally and then start teaching it, and maybe even being a teacher trainer for him, because I really stand by the work that he does. And so I first found out about him through a podcast that I was on about 1.5 years ago called The Yoga Addiction, from my friends Natalie Sanger and Sandy Hewen. And they stopped the podcast. So I had a couple episodes on there, one about yin and restorative yoga, and then one about the business of yoga, which I've already been very transparent about in other episodes of our podcast. Mm-hmm. So I got Jivana's book, I read through it, and I hate reading. I just don't obtain information, but it was super easy to absorb. Yes. It is. Good morning. Hi. Hi. Nice to finally hear your voice and see you, well, kind of in person.
Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you. Can you hear me okay? Let's see.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
We can hear you perfully.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Rachel. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Rachel, nice to meet you too.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And I just want to I always like to say this to our guests right off the bat, that we are recording right away so that you're not surprised.
That's okay. It's fun that way.
Exactly.
And Hero did a little bit of introduction to yourself just before you hopping on. And first of all, are you in Santa Barbara?
Yes, Santa Barbara.
How is it there? No, I didn't mean to laugh. That's not. That's Canadians don't mean to laugh at you.
It's okay. It's laughable these days in the U.S. Well, weather-wise, it's quite nice. It's not too bad, but
I bet.
we're still in lockdown, and it's pretty intense. California's going through a hard time, so I'm not really doing much these days. Mostly staying home. Probably like most people.
Right.
How are things there? Where are you in Canada?
Rachel?
Oh, sorry. I was like, Hero? Isn't that funny? We kind of look at each other like we're not actually even in the same room as each other. We're so used to this.
No, you have to turn. I'm turning to the left. You have to turn to the right. Rachel?
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I'm actually, Jivana, are you familiar with Vancouver or?
Yeah.
Okay. So Hero's in Vancouver and he's actually like pretty much downtown Vancouver. And I lived in Vancouver, specifically the North Shore, North Van for almost my whole life, and then just moved actually to Vernon in the Okanagan a couple years ago. So I don't know if you know where that is.
No.
He's like, nope, that's way too out of Vancouver, darling. No.
Basically, the Okanagan, I put it that way because that kind of blankets the area that I live in, is kind of like almost like a Napa Valley kind of idea. Nice. So yeah, it is, but it's much smaller towns and it's not the same hustle and bustle as Vancouver, which is why I left. So
well, it's beautiful there. I went once about 2 years ago, and we went to Whistler as well.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, and that's funny when people think about British Columbia, they think about Vancouver and Whistler primarily, unless if they know about the interior for other forms of like mountain activity or certain things like wine countries and stuff. But yeah, as Rachel said, I'm in downtown Vancouver, grew up in Kerrisdale, which is about 20 minutes of drive going towards University of British Columbia. And I know you and I have talked a little bit because I wanted to have you come to the city, which I still intend to have you come to the city and figure that out for you.
Someday.
But yeah, I was really excited to see you were interested in coming on. And I know that I was just explaining to Rachel that I actually initially found out about you from the Yoga Addiction podcast. And you were on shortly after when I had my episode about yin and restorative yoga. And I talked about the industry a little bit from a candid lens because that's how I am. And nothing's changed in there. But I was really excited to kind of chat with you a little bit and also introduce you to Rachel, because we're yoga teachers and we're much more than just yoga teachers. We're human beings with a lot of different things to talk about. But
what does that even mean?
Yeah, but
and I mean, okay. And we could get on a whole other tangent about what does a yoga teacher entail these days and what does it mean in a bigger city and blah, blah, blah.
Right, but exactly.
With that being said, no, and Hero was just telling me, so we kind of, like I said, introduced you, but we'd love for you to introduce yourself. We talked about accessible yoga, and you've pretty much, if I'm mistaken, let me know, but you pretty much coined that term about a decade ago, I think. Yeah. Where has time gone? And what I really wanted to know, because with accessible yoga, just yoga being available for everybody at any point in their lives, whether they're confined to a chair, whether they, just have, which is why it's called accessible, just having it be able to have movement of some sort for anybody. But when I think about accessible yoga, I also think about the fact that I believe that yoga, I'm just going to use the word should be accessible to anybody. And I personally kind of got tired of going to classes myself. I'll say in Vancouver, where, I walk into a studio and half the class are doing handstands before practice for a gentle hatha class or yin class. And I'm like, how is this? So I guess my question is, with accessible yoga, where is that kind of a part of it, or how, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. How did you come to be with that terminology, and how did you, you are, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example, actually, of some of the challenges I think we face these days. Yep. But I mean, my background actually is in AIDS activism. I was an AIDS activist mostly in the 80s and 90s. Like, I lived in New York and then San Francisco then. And, it's like I came out right in the middle of AIDS. Like, my generation of gay men was just like devastated by AIDS. And so many of my friends, got sick and died. And so that was just like the world I was in. And I had been doing yoga for myself for a long time. Actually, my grandmother taught me yoga when I was little.
Wow.
Kid. I know, that was cool. And then I kind of just got back into it. Huh?
I was just to say that's rare for that.
Yeah.
I think I see it more now, you know,
Yeah.
with parents and grandparents. Wow.
She was like an old hippie. She was really, it's really amazing. Really incredible person. And she was way ahead of her time. But anyway, so I came back to yoga, you know, kind of after college. And then during those activist years, I was just like, I don't know, just really struggling with the grief and the anger and just like a lot of the stuff that was going on emotionally. And yoga became my like refuge personally. I mean, it really saved me and helped me get through that time. And then it kind of occurred to me that I could share yoga with my community. So basically that's why I became a yoga teacher, was to share yoga with people with HIV and AIDS. And then it just kind of expanded. And then and also as an activist, I was really interested in the idea of ableism and how people with disabilities and chronic illness are excluded and not just excluded, but really oppressed in our society. I mean, and most of the world, actually. It's really unbelievable. In fact, I heard there's over 1 billion people who identify as having a disability in the world. That's a huge, it's like the largest minority group in the world.
No kidding.
Yeah. But it's a group that has very little power or voice or like, you know, like it's a group that is kind of ignored largely. And I find I'm really interested in that, like disability rights actually, and how that intersects with yoga and social justice. And so accessible yoga, and that term, really accessible, came out of the disability rights movement, because that's really a word that's used in disability world.
Yes.
And so I was interested in how can we make yoga accessible? And then it kind of, you know, and the other side of that word too, for me, is like, it's not about changing yoga always. It's not always about adapting it. It's also about looking at the essential teachings of yoga and realizing those are they're universal teachings. So those are really, I wouldn't say accessible, but they apply to everyone. And yet they're not taught that way. So there's like this, what is it, you know, called like not a paradox, but like there's a problem.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's contradictory. It's contradictory.
Yeah.
Because you make a really good point. And I was saying to Rachel that I did get your book in the beginning of the pandemic, because I kind of joke around, but like, because of my own learning disabilities with having NVLD and high functioning anxiety, reading comprehension has always been delayed for me. Like I was speech delayed until I was 5. So, I mean, reading comprehension is not my strongest suit, but yet I love to write. So when I got your book, I was like, no, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read this man's book, because even if it's like a little intro, so I know a little bit about your story, but I wanted you to verbally talk about it and continue talking about it. I said, no, I'm going to read this damn book and I'm going to go through it. I'm going to actually absorb the information, because I'm actually going to take this guy's training in the future. So thanks for writing a book that's actually easy to read and that doesn't require much attention span to actually go through it, which is important to transmit information to people like myself that maybe don't find it accessible to read. So I think that's a nice little segue to that as well.
Yeah. Thanks for reading it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. I actually I'm finishing up my second book right now, and it has more words, less pictures, unfortunately.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. I'll still read it.
Oh, too. Oh my God. So when's the last time you taught in person? I guess it's been.
Wow. Oh, I don't know. Gosh, you know, I led a training. I think it was in February in Atlanta. That was my last in-person training that I led. And then ever since then, I think I've been teaching online. But, you know, honestly, I'm kind of loving it because of access. Like, you know, what I found is that I had never offered my training online before. And doing it online, I could just reach more people and people who couldn't come. A lot of people telling me, you know, I couldn't afford to travel or pay for the hotel. And then, you know, taking it online, it's actually less expensive. And then they can watch the recording, so it's more like adaptable. Also for learning differences, like people who can't sit through a whole session, they can just watch part of the recording and then watch part of it later. They can review it as many times as they want. So I'm excited about that. Like, you know, online reaches more people. Yeah.
Totally.
Talk about that being more accessible, right? Which is kind of bizarre. Yeah, I did read your mind, but it's just kind of, again, we're talking about contradictions, we're talking about parallels, paradoxes, and yet here's something where technology is actually making something like yoga more accessible, which in some ways dilutes it, but in the other sense of learning and extracting information, it actually emphasizes it. So that's what I find very bizarre, right? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I agree. It's kind of contradictory. I know another word I've been thinking about is dialectic. That's what I was using. A dialectic is like two seemingly opposed truths, like two things that can exist. But like I feel torn about it because being in person, doing yoga with people is really profound. And it's like, I think as a teacher, I really relied on that energy from the group.
Yeah.
And so I had to get over it. Like I had to realize, wait, I'm here to give. And so actually I find it's more tiring to teach online because it's like just me and the computer, and I'm just having to like give. And in person, I ask questions and I get a lot of time where I get energy back, and just the energy, like actually energy from the people in the room, or people smiling or nodding. I don't know. It's not the same.
No, energy can be transmitted through different ways, and through the podcast, we both realize that we can. But I find there are some things you cannot change, and one thing is like a live theater, concert, traveling, obviously, but also like yoga trainings. I was gonna go and embark like this around this time right now on a 2-year yoga therapy training to get my IAYT certification at Langara College here, and they went online. I'm like, I'm not doing yoga therapy virtually. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that shit online, because you don't have a personal connection to something that's so deep and raw, and that you need to cultivate a safe container in person for that. It's just, how can you learn online like that? So I'm curious to know what it's been like for you with taking your experiences online, even if it's a 21-hour training, and what has that been like for you, right?
Yeah, actually, I think that's key though, is what you said, is that, my training is shorter. It's, it's about 21 hours in person, a little bit longer actually. So it's 30 hours total. Right. And that's quite short. I mean, it's really mostly for people who are already yoga teachers. And so it's not the same as like new people embarking on this whole new adventure, like yoga therapy, or brand new 200-hour training. Like, I think that true. I'm afraid of that. Like, I'm sure it works, but I haven't gone there. I just lead my same program. And I'm really like, I have a goal of like reaching everyone. Like, I just want to train every yoga teacher in the world.
Yeah, that's a goal to have, and I know you're on that, and you will be, especially with the content that you provide. And Rachel, I know your brain is sizzling.
Is it sizzling? I don't.
Yeah, I can see.
No, I'm enjoying just listening, and normally it is, but right now it's just nice to listen. But
well, I'll say a bit, teaching online is this, that there's a lot of it's lecture you could still do, right? Like, and then it's the asanas are harder because you're not in the space. You can't just kind of watch everyone's body. But on screen, what I do is I ask people to be on screen, and we have pretty big groups. And so actually sometimes people sit back and just watch, and they can see so many different bodies. So it's actually more diverse experience in a way than being in a room with like 15 or 30 people. You can be on screen and watch 50, 100 people moving, and it's quite amazing. So there's some benefits actually.
Well, because also like if you're a student and you're watching, yourself, Jivana, you're not necessarily like, you're watching you're not usually necessarily looking at everybody else. So when you're looking at that screen, like what you just said, you're forced to see everybody, and also you're not looking like, I'm not a huge fan of mirrors in studios. I don't know if you are, but I'm not at all. Okay, good. I didn't want to offend you, but no, exactly. So you don't have a choice. Like you're looking, I do love that. But also, it's interesting because when I first started doing a couple classes online, it is interesting. I didn't think about it being more energy that it would take for me, but it is, because I'm having to also, showcase or, do the poses with the students so that they can see an example or those kinds of things. But not being able to read body language necessarily is very difficult. So how have you, is there more interaction that you're trying to get from students now than you?
Like I've learned, even just over the course of the year, I've gotten better at it, where I've asked people if they can be spotlighted during the training. So like I've asked kind of, they come up on screen, you know, so I'll be looking through the pictures and kind of choose someone and look at how someone's doing this and look at this variation, look at this. Because a lot of the training is about like creativity and really asking people to understand the essence of a practice and then find it in their body and like give them challenges. So it's not, I don't teach like a traditional way of like, do it like this. Like I'm more like, here's the, like, can you find this pose in this position? Like, can you do, for example, can you do tree pose in a chair focused on balance? Like, can you bring the element of balance into a chair practice, for example? And so like, they'll give that challenge to them and like, see what they do. And then I'll give them some ideas myself. Well, this is how I like to do it, but that works fine. That's fine. Like people do that, they do an exploration, and then I also can watch each other and see different people doing different things.
Yeah.
And we also use breakout rooms more. So that's a new thing, like really trying to get people into small groups and connect. Because I think community building is the other piece that is really lost in the online world.
Yeah. And actually, and I was trying to pull up a quote that I saw on your Instagram page because it was very profound to me. You know, we think about ourselves. I mean, Hero and I are fairly young, and you just, well, I mean, you said something about, I'm going to butcher this, that you can't rely on the fact that you're going to be healthy your entire life. So there's going to come a day when, you know, we're going to get old, we're going to get sick, and, you know, how do you transition?
We're going to die.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're either going to get old, get sick, or die, you know, and some combination of that, and death is always going to happen, you know. So it's like, I mean, that's what yoga is preparing us for.
Right, exactly. And there was just something so profound to me about that as well. And just, you know, how do you make your practice accessible so that you can smoothly transition into those times of your life? You know, you can't just rely on the fact that maybe, I mean, I've never been able to do a handstand in my life. I don't care about doing a handstand, to be honest, ever. But there was just something really profound about what you said in that.
Yeah, I think, and also what you just said about handstand, like, I think we focused on physical ability as the goal of yoga. And so people think that, oh, well, doing advanced asana is getting more advanced in yoga. And actually, that's not really the case. You know, yoga is a spiritual practice. So in spirituality, it's not like more is better. It's not like more complicated poses is more spiritual. It doesn't work that way. And so we've confused a spiritual practice with a very physical practice. And what's beautiful about yoga is it has both. Again, there is that kind of paradox in yoga that it's an embodied physical practice, like an embodied spiritual practice. And that's something very unusual. And that's why yoga is so popular, is that you can use like the concrete body in your spiritual path. And it's incredible, right? I mean, yoga is amazing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go that way. It's not like more and more and more. It's actually more subtle is more advanced in yoga, like more profound, more awake, more aware, more self-aware. You know, those are the issues that's what we're trying to work towards in yoga. And I think that's basically what my second book is about, actually, is like really trying to focus on what is yoga for in terms of our lives. Like, how do we bring yoga into real life in the face of our suffering and the suffering that's happening in the world?
Absolutely.
Very well said. Because when I think about teaching as well, because I primarily now teach this yin and restorative and some gentle hatha, and I have a couple studio classes that I teach yoga and Pilates fusion, but it's still very chill and non-physically related. It's interesting when you think about the philosophy and the actual limbs of yoga, because that is actually how I practice my yoga, is primarily off the mat these days, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I think is needed for the world right now, more than ever. More than ever. I mean, if there was ever a time to get that message out, it's probably now. Like, perhaps I think there's so many more people that I know that have, first of all, never experienced anxiety in their lives ever, and that are experiencing it for the very first time over this pandemic this year, or depression, or, you know, those kinds of things. And, you know, starting to realize that it needs to be more cerebral, then I mean, obviously you need both. You need to exercise the body as well. But I mean, I don't know. I think that you hit the nail on the head with probably coming out with this book that's to come out soon.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. The new one doesn't come out till November, but hopefully it'll be mostly over the pandemic by then. But I think you're right. It's brought up a lot of stuff, just like AIDS did for me, And I think it's unfortunately it's pain and suffering that really is our teacher, and that's where like we have an opportunity to learn or to like bypass and like try to avoid it. And I think it's like yoga mostly is that these days is like avoid the pain, and that's not what yoga really is about. It's like you said, it's learning how to be present in your body and with your emotions at the same time.
Exactly.
And like how to process.
And there was I said to my husband the other night, I said, because people that are not familiar with the other limbs of yoga, they're only familiar with the asana practice. And I said, really what asana was there for is so that you can, do these physical components so that you can be comfortable sitting in meditation for hours and hours and hours, or being,
that's correct.
Right? So interestingly enough, like the asana part wasn't really the main focus of yoga necessarily. I don't know if that's like a layman's terms of putting it, but
no, that's right. That's correct.
No, it's correct. And as I know, I could tell you were nodding your head too, Jivana. Like the reason why asana has become such a popularity is because it's tangible, it's packageable, and it's marketable. That's the only reason why. Because then that way people can actually feel like they're doing something. And it drives me insane when people say, "Oh, they see someone doing a down dog," like, "Oh, they're doing yoga." It's like, they're not doing yoga at all. They don't know what the fuck they're doing at all. It's just that their ass is up in the air ready to get fucked and their hands and their feet are on the ground. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Are they even breathing? Are they even looking with intention? Probably not. They probably like, "Oh, look at me. Like I'm actually like enlightened." No, you're not fucking enlightened, but thanks for trying.
And you just brought something up for me that we've talked about a couple times in this show, but speaking of what's on the outside and what we're physically looking at, but social media yogis, and the hero's already rolling his eyes, but we've just kind of brought this up a few times in the show, and like how do you get yourself noticed or recognized these days on social media, which is so visual, when you're trying to make it or try to get recognized or noticed or get the followers or those kinds of things in the yoga world. So actually, with that being said, is there a component of what you do that has to do with business, or do you talk about that with your?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what you both are saying. I think it's true. Like Hiro is saying that you can't look at someone else and see if they're doing yoga or not. They can be doing yoga poses, but it doesn't really mean they're doing yoga. It's like it's an internal practice. So the physical part is huge and it's really helpful, but it's not really the most important part, right? The most important part is what's happening in your mind and in your emotions, actually, and in your energy. And you can't really see that from outside. But I actually think that can be an empowering message too for people to realize that it doesn't have to look a certain way. So I would just say for social media, like accessible yoga, we've tried to, really diversify the imagery around yoga practitioners, and we do a lot of work around education and kind of uplifting other voices, people that don't look like you'd expect to see in yoga magazine and social media. And I actually think it's changing. I mean, I do get discouraged when sometimes I make the mistake of looking at some more popular yoga feeds. But like in my little world, there's like, I feel like there's this whole underground yoga community, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And in our world, like in that world, it's doing great. Like, I think people get it. They're doing beautiful work. Like, they're really into service, diversity, social justice issues. Like, we're really, it's about lifting up marginalized voices.
Yeah.
But then it's like I said, occasionally if you glance at some of those big names, oof, that's.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, well, and also, and of course, with complete confidentiality, I'm not afraid to go there. I'm really not. You know, there is a figure that I was really inspired by, that I wanted to connect with, and that I really appreciated the message that they were putting out through their media, and how they were constructing the philosophies and the inclusivity of certain marginalized populations and groups. And when I reached out to them very wholeheartedly, and wanted to get to know who they were and to understand what they were doing, it was very interesting to see how something that was completely innocent and with good intention was misinterpreted by their perception, and to see the way that they retaliated, and the way that they actually turned something that was so sincere into actually saying, you don't practice yoga, you're an idiot, you have no class, you're a complete disgrace to this community, and you need therapy. And I'm thinking, to be assumed in such a way for something that, if you actually took a look at what I stand for, and you actually even looked at my profile, you would realize that one single expression that's part of my brand, for you to go out and take that in a way that is so out of line, is a perfect example of what we just talked about, to kind of thread this little package together. Is that you might preach something, but if you're not practicing it in its full entirety, how are you continuing to build your own leadership and following of people that are hopefully transparent and sincere enough to not interpret it in such a judgmental way, discriminatory way?
I think that there's also, just to add to that really quickly, sorry, Jivana, if you're going to say something, I was just going to say, there's also, I think, on the extreme of being, like, in quotations, spiritual, and being what you coin to be spiritual, there's almost like an arrogancy that can come with that extreme too, that it's like, well, I'm spiritual, I do these things, and it's like they've become this idea, or this I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but
they kind of think they're a guru, right? They get that idea of guru or goddess, or and then also, not in a negative way, but people become so overly sensitive that it actually detracts from the fact that they're trying to increase sensitivity. You got to find that balance of being not overly retaliate and sensitive, but at the same time have a sense of humor and understand the intention, even if you can't tell always by writing and tone, which it's been my entire life's issue with my learning disabilities. But still, like, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting to bring up, because this is the society we live as we are continuing to neutralize size, ability, gender, race, culture, religion. I mean, there's so many things, right?
Well, I want to say I'm sorry to hear that happen to you, and it's terrible, because I totally agree. Like, actually, and you mentioned neutral. Like, neutral is the key, actually. That, like, I think that's what yoga is about too. Is that we can learn how to have space between our reaction to something. You know, that we have more self-control, but not in a way that's oppressive. That you allow yourself to experience your feelings, but you also have this pause so that you don't have to be reactionary. And that's really what yoga helps us with, like tapas, you know, that teaching of learning from our suffering. Which is about, tapas isn't about abuse, like, it's not about being masochistic and wanting to be in pain. It's about realizing that when pain comes, it could be a lesson that would actually make us happier. Do you know what I mean? So it's actually a way out of suffering. And I think that's really the focus of yoga. In many ways, is a way out of suffering, and but it really calls for profound self-awareness, and that's hard. You know, it's really hard, and especially around the ego. So, like the thing you mentioned around, you know, people getting defensive or something. It's like, or being built up as celebrity. That's against yoga, really. I mean, yoga is about not being invested in that idea of the self, the false small self. It's about connecting with our spiritual, bigger self, right? That self in us that's the same in me as in you and everyone else. So it's humility. And I actually, the way I think about it is it's about service and community. So, because I think to say it's not about ourselves is hard for us. And so instead you could think it's about the people you love and connecting. And so for me, like if someone approaches me, it's always an opportunity to build community. And so, in fact, Rachel, before you asked how we focus, or if I talk about business, and I don't really talk that much about business except around the idea of community building.
Right.
And I have a nonprofit, Accessible Yoga, which is, I mean, it's hard because it's like, it's not really commercially viable, but it's community based. And so we have a very, not small, but relatively small and really dedicated community. You know what I mean? So it's a group of people that are really committed and care about each other. And I think the way to grow in an authentic way is through that, through like reaching out to others and connecting with them. Yeah.
So one thing I want to touch on that, because I know Rachel has a thought on it. You'll notice because Rachel and I are best friends, and we're both Aquarius, and we're basically twins, like two Jewish brother and sisters from different parents, and both Aquarians. And so it's kind of like, what are you gonna do? So, anyways.
Well, I'm Gemini, so it's like I have twins inside of me. So.
There you go. So we're talking really. There's like quadruplets happening right now, which is hilarious. So, okay, though, let's see if I can remember my train of thought. The airhead in me.
And I'm Jewish too, by the way.
That I did not know. So there you go. I had no idea. So Mazel Tov. It's a Hanukkah. Chaim, right. Fuck. What was I gonna say? It was.
I have no idea.
Community building. We talk about followings all the time, and I'm not calling Rachel out, but I think it's actually a relevant. It's a relevant opportunity. When we were talking about guests to have on the show and stuff, Rachel's like, what's their follower count? What's their platform? Like, do they have over 10,000 followers? And I was saying to her, like, no, that's important because it can help them reach certain people. But what's also important too, and equally important, is with people like me. If, for example, if I didn't have 10,000 followers, then that could be removing an opportunity from someone that might have a powerful message and a voice. And so for me to have like 1,640 followers on Instagram, which is really not that bad for my own generation of content. There's lots of companies that I've approached about ambassadorship or influencership and things like that. And they'll write me off because they'll say, you don't have enough followers. But it's not about the followers always, as you were saying, it's about the reach. It's about the people that you're impacting in your actual life, in your city, in community, that are actually generating awareness to what you're trying to bring attention to, which might actually be a higher margin and percentage than, say, someone that has 100 times the followership of you, but that just doesn't give two shits about you, and that they're just gonna, throw it as a charity opportunity. And it's like, okay, all right, well, I did that. That was my hour for the next 5 years of giving back to somebody, right? Yeah. So with your organization, to have the followership that you do, that's organic, true followership of a high margin that is going to be so grateful, and then grow your community by word of mouth and referral as well. And I think that's even more powerful.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree. I totally agree. I think it's so easy to get lost in that. I think celebrity and all that, it's just another like level of something that we have to overcome to be happy. Like, it actually, the things that we think are going to make us happy are actually our obstacles. Like, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that fame and money and whatever are going to fulfill us is kind of a lie. The thing is, we need some, right? You need like enough money to be comfortable. You have to take care of yourself. But beyond that, it doesn't really lead to happiness, I don't think. I mean, and I would say that's what yoga teaches, that happiness arises from within. And that's the point of the practice. And if you're focused more on the celebrity and the, I don't know what, like notoriety, then you're in a trap. And I've gotten in that trap. I mean, it's part of the way the mind works. There was actually a research study that came out, an article I just saw recently about it, but it shows that yoga and meditation could increase ego. And I was like, what? So it basically showed that the modern practice, the way we're practicing now, is so self-focused that it increases the ego. Correct. And I don't know. To me, it's like, that's not what yoga is about. It's about service.
Interesting.
About getting over yourself, basically.
And I think like what I was going to say, just when you're talking about the community that you've built, which is phenomenal. And the reason why I brought up the business of yoga, so to speak, is I had a very small yoga studio for a couple of years in Vancouver. And because that city is so fucking expensive, excuse my French, to live in, as is like New York. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Vancouver, I think was for a while voted like the #1 most expensive city, as in there was no correlation between a livable wage and the minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I guess my point is that when I started to turn what I coined as being passionate about and what was helping me and others in my community with my yoga practice, and I had a studio and a business and needed to survive financially speaking, that's when it all got kooky, crazy, like very confusing. Like I couldn't pay my teachers. And that's what I mean about the business of yoga. So I feel like if somebody their goal maybe is to teach full time and not have any other means of monetization in their lives, like that's hard.
That's hard.
Really hard. And I was trying to do that. And it kind of just, I lost myself. That's for damn sure. I lost my, again, I'm just going to use that word passion, but the passion or the tools that I had coined for so many years for myself from yoga. And, but the reality was it's still a business. The studio is still a business. I still need to pay my lease and all those kinds of things. So, I almost feel like, in an odd way, feel like yoga shouldn't be a part of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I try to separate it in my mind a little bit. I mean, I try to live yoga, but also I try to be realistic. Like there's the business side and then there's the yoga side. And I know that the yoga isn't something you can buy or sell. You can't.
No.
You know what I mean? It's beyond that. I totally agree. It's like...
Well, yeah, and the original practice of yoga was not even being given a training or a piece of paper. It was by your teacher to you as a blessing and as an honor. It was a privilege to learn these tools and these gifts that we actually go out to share with the world, which is what just frustrates me when I see, $300, $200-hour online yoga teacher training, get certified in 14 days. I'm like, you're a fucking asshole. Seriously, how dare you commoditize? And I don't give a shit. I mean, this is our podcast. I don't give a shit. This is the reality. And I'm like, you know what? And people always say to me, like, Hero, don't say this. Hero, don't say this. Be careful. I'm like, no, fuck you. Like, I'm gonna gaslight all of your bullshit because if no one else is doing it, then nothing's gonna change. I mean, like, get over yourself, And it's important to understand that our spirituality and our connection to self-help and healing should not be exchanged for selling yourself out. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that, and they get lost into the whole corporatocracy that this has become $1 billion industry. And so when people like yourself that are truly representing what yoga truly is and giving a spotlight to people that can help share it is nothing short of a miracle, because this needs to continue to grow and to extend itself into our future generations of people, and hope to bring that neutrality and accessibility as a community, yoga or not. It's such an important tool that we can bring to people, the more that we know how to bring it to them.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Jivana, your activism side of you, which is kind of where it all came from, I think that's played obviously a huge part into what your focus is with your yoga, which is not the same as a lot of other people, I think.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I definitely didn't come into yoga, I think, like most people did. So I think I was lucky in a way that I had a different background in it. And also, I mean, it just made me really wary of the corporate side. It's funny though, because these days I'm challenged a lot by that, and like trying to find the balance, because like I got approached by Lululemon to do I did a class on their Instagram page just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
It was such a weird experience, because it's like they have millions of followers, and I really appreciate the fact that they were willing to show accessible yoga. I mean, I did chair yoga basically, which is, I don't think they've ever done chair yoga before at Lululemon or, through their platform. So I thought that was good. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like, am I selling out? And also it's like, it was weird to see some of the reaction. Literally half the comments were about what I was wearing. And could they buy those pieces, still, you know what I mean? So I was like, and I was like, wait, this shows me. I mean, most of Lululemon's followers are not actually interested in yoga.
No.
Which is okay. It's a clothing company. But I'm just saying I have to struggle a little bit with that. Like, try to be authentic and not sell out and get stuck in that trap, because it's a trap, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not a okay, if you don't fit like two or three of the male or female archetypes, like any corporate brand, don't get me started, then you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be visually appealing to people. If you do not offer the service, if it is a service you're offering, that is like a style of teaching or whatever, mainly vinyasa or hot or something that is very sympathetic nervous system, I'm going to kill you because that's what you need to do to feel enlightened, then you're not going to be successful. If you don't speak in a way that's positive and uplifting and that's completely devoid of emotion, you're not going to be successful. If you don't fit anything that's authentic or vulnerable or realistic, you're not going to be successful. Like, literally, these are the things that I've had to face as a teacher, teaching public classes in Vancouver, in every studio that I can think of, almost, including community centers, country clubs, drop-in studios, turnkey studios. Like, for example, we talk about this a lot. Rachel wanted me to teach for her studio, and you know what? That was the one part of me that was very business oriented. Like, you can't afford me, but it's no judgment on you as a person, but I'm gonna burn out. But if I could have taught for somewhere full time, it would have been Rachel's studio because of her and what she has to offer, and I would have come 3 hours out of my way if I could. So one thing I wanted to ask you about is, who are you before anything happened with your brand? What happened? And you talked a little bit about living in New York and LA and going through the movement through AIDS and things like that. But I'm very curious to know about, what was life for you as a child and as a teenager, as an adult now, and what actually transpired into current day, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I could talk about it forever, but I write a bit about it in my new book, actually. I share a lot of my story, you know, which isn't that unusual, but I mean, as a gay man, like, most of my childhood was influenced by that, just like knowing I was gay and feeling excluded from the world and not seeing myself reflected in society, and just like really struggling with that. And I think that led to my spiritual questions, you know, which was like, I mean, I think it was a gift to be on the outside growing up and watching the way that society works and how most people don't ask questions. We just kind of are completely invested in this reality. And I was always like, wait, this is it? This is the whole thing? And like, you know, I just had a lot of questions always. And yoga was the only place I could find that offered any real answers to those questions. And so I just really got deep into yoga. And then, like I said, I mean, AIDS really was like a shock. I was young. I don't know, like, what year is that? I mean, I'm 53, and I came out when I was 17, and that was like right in the middle of AIDS. And I can't explain it. You are young, so like, it's like this. It's like as if COVID was only happening to like a certain population. Like, it was only those first 5 years, it was like only gay men. And then it started spreading to other communities, and it has now, of course, spread to a lot of other communities, HIV. But it was like we had our own COVID, and it was like nobody really paid attention. Like for the first 4 years, the president didn't say the word HIV or AIDS for 4 years. It was Ronald Reagan. And so it was like, can you imagine? I mean, yeah, Trump's like a disaster here, but even if he like wasn't even speaking of it, like saying the word, like if he wouldn't say COVID in public, and it's like and then I was like watching people getting sick and dying around me, and I'm like, what is happening? So, I mean, the activism was just, I didn't have a choice. I was just like, I had a questioning nature, and I just was in a situation that was like, yeah, like now. I mean, it was just like really a lot of pain and suffering.
Did you have support, at least from family, or was there any?
Yeah, my family was supportive, and I had a great community of other queer people. I mean, it was, you know, through the activism, I found an amazing community. ACT UP was the organization I was involved with in New York and then San Francisco, and like, they were incredible. They were actually slightly older than me. Like, most of them, like I was on the young side those days. So I learned so much from like these people, like my mentors, you know, were like mostly gay men that were like a few years older than me. And I was like coming out and like, they were like showing me the ropes, and like, then they were getting sick. And so I was like watching these people that I really respected and looked up to and kind of was like in love with, honestly, mostly, watching them get sick and die. I mean, I could name like 5 guys that I just was like, you know, they were everything to me. It was like there was like my new family that I had created kind of, and they all got sick and died. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. And that, I mean, to be around death when you're like in your 20s, it just wakes you up, you know, and it's hard to just go on about your life, you know, when it feels so, like, I feel lucky. I mean, and now as I get older, I mean, it's like I get more complacent again. But you know, it was spiritual lessons, you know, all that death and illness and suffering, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if that's what you were asking me about, but.
Well, no, I mean, of course, I was curious about that for sure. But I was also wondering about your life, even from being in that scope of HIV and queer identity, but also in terms of your parents, I mean, if you have siblings, what was it like being in schools, in the school system, things that were really formative years of your life and you don't have to talk about those if you
don't. No, no one ever asked me that.
Yeah, in our podcast, we really stress on understanding who the person is, and not necessarily just what they do, but like, who are they? Like, why?
Actually,
how do they get what they are?
Yeah, I love that question, just because I mean, my parents both died in the last couple of years. My dad died last year. My mom died 3 years ago, and
Sorry.
They were. Yeah, it's okay. They like, death is a theme, you know. They were amazing, actually. I had incredible parents, and they were both artists in a way. My mom was an actress and my dad's a photographer. And I think that was a huge influence on me. My background is in visual art, like painting and drawing was like everything. It was all I was doing. It was like drawing as I was growing up constantly.
And with my mom.
Oh.
Yeah. And actually, I think art really was key to my kind of understanding of yoga as a creative practice, because like I just saw everything through that perspective of art and creativity, and in many ways that's the root of my teaching now, is you know, is how to find, well, actually what it is that to me creativity is spirituality. Like, I don't see them as two different things.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, like because I've said this a few times in the podcast as well, but I grew up with musical theater parents. So there was a very interesting, bright, creative, interesting, I'll just say again, interesting community. But I know that I'm younger than you, but like, just to have the parents that were so accepting of everything and everybody because of the community they were involved with in that creative community. I feel like there's a similarity maybe between that and yourself. And that's probably, you know, being able to just be yourself was.
Yeah. And I'm going to show you something I have.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been doing, I'm not doing it right now because you're engaging in this conversation, so I'm like really involved, but often I sit in a Zoom call and draw the people I'm talking to.
Cool.
So I can show you some of my drawings if you want. I have one that made me laugh. I don't know if you can see it, if it's bright enough, but yeah, maybe not.
Oh yeah.
I can
Are these Zoom people?
Yeah, they're Zoom people and they're little Zoom boxes.
I love that. Look at that. That's so great.
Here's my daughter. Here.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I've been going back to drawing, like, 'cause actually Zoom has helped me just to like be, you know, I'm like sitting here staring at the screen.
Look at that.
That's amazing.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see that very clearly.
Yes. Yeah.
My kids are older now. My husband and I adopted 2 kids, and now they're 19 and 15.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Here's my daughter again. She's obsessed with horses, so there's a horse hanging over her head.
Oh my God, she's beautiful. They're both beautiful. Wow.
Oh, I've never, drawing people is so hard.
It's so much fun.
I'm an abstract artist. Like that's how my
Really?
brain works. Yeah,
Is that behind you? Is that what that is?
yeah. This is my artwork from high school.
Oh, it's beautiful.
From high school, oh my gosh, that's cool.
Yeah, from 10 years ago. Now you know how old I am. But anyways, yeah.
Young. You're young.
Well, chronologically, maybe. ask my heart, and my soul. But anyways, but again, when you talked about art, that's why I'm curious to know about what transpires into who we are, because we're results of what we do in the past, or what is put into our past affects the future, right? And so even you talk about parenthood, being a parent. What was the process of like that? Have you always wanted to have children? Was that a discussion between you and your husband? How did you meet your husband? Like, what are some of these different parts of your life?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We met at ACT UP. I met my husband. He was just getting involved at ACT UP. Just when I was trying to get out, actually, I was like burnt out and I was like done. And like all of a sudden this new guy arrived and I was like, oh, and so we started, we met, we were at an event and they asked for childcare. And so he raised his hand to offer childcare. And I was like, okay, I'll do it too. Because he was cute. So I went and we both like took care of these little kids. And so in a way, our first interaction was around kids. And I was like, I hadn't really thought either way about kids. Like I think I had told myself that it wasn't possible. As a gay man, I had, part of, my struggle growing up was just realizing that I wouldn't have, because again, I came out young, like that was young, like that was in the 70s. It was a different world,
Yeah.
Like you didn't see gay people on TV. Like no one talked about it. And there were no gay families really. And so I didn't think it was possible to have kids. I just kind of wrote it off. But he didn't. He was like always sure he'd have kids. Like it was just something he always thought he would do. And so, after we were together for a while, we started talking about it, and gay marriage wasn't legal. So we didn't think gay adoption was legal, but we met a gay man who had adopted a baby. And we were just like, actually it was like a queer parents group that had formed, and there were just like 5 people. It was really small. And he told us how he did it through open adoption, where the birth parents choose the adopted parents. It was really cool. And so that's what we did actually.
Wow.
But the thing is about it, I just want to say, like parenting, both of my kids have disabilities. Like my daughter has emotional issues and drug issues, and my son has learning disabilities. And they're older now, but I think some of that is from adoption itself, and some of it's just genetic. But I think it's the thing about adoption that people don't talk about very much, which is like it was so much more challenging than I expected. My kids are amazing, but parenting them was very hard, is still very, very challenging because of their needs.
Were they babies when you adopted them?
Yeah, so they were both newborn babies, like from different birth mothers, because my son, who's 19 now, we met his birth mother when she was still pregnant. She chose us, and we had a relationship with her. We still do. And it was always very open, because we're 2 men. We didn't make this baby. Like you need to know who your mother is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. No, and you're right though. And again, as I mentioned, like I grew up with chronic anxiety. Rachel, I know, does deal with similar strands of anxiety. And then, nonverbal learning disorders and stuff. And then going through all the other stuff that goes on just genetically being from my parents. So I can only imagine you being as an adopted parent in, not that I would say, but in a same-sex relationship where a child might have the idea of who's the mother, who's the father. Did these things come up at all? Or was it not questioned because that was their norm?
That didn't come up it only came up in terms of what other kids said to them. Like this is normal for them. They never really cared about having 2 dads. Like that was nothing. But I remember my son they really didn't care at all, but my daughter definitely was sensitive to peer pressure and like people talking about us. But mostly, I think it just made she would hide it sometimes. Like she would have to come out, like she would have to come out. Like I have a gay family. Like every time she met someone, it would be like a thing. And so I think she would avoid that. But And so that was an issue, but I think more so it was just, I think they're doing more research now around adoption, that there is trauma from that, the bond of just leaving your birth mother. I mean, it's just totally normal to, even as loving as we were, and I think we were great parents and trying to be, you know, you're in this woman's womb and then you are taken away from what you know. And I think even if it's not conscious, there's just like this very deep trauma that can cause psychological issues later. There's research now that like a big percentage of kids who are adopted end up having mental health issues. It's very common. So I think we're going to see more about that, you know, in the future. But it definitely made the last, you know, 19 years really intense, like really intense. Like I had no idea.
Well, you have no gray hair on your scalp, so you're doing something.
Well, I'm losing my hair altogether, actually. So.
Oh, okay.
See that.
Well, the hair that you have and this position, it's a great space for a keepa. So
I know. I need to get some of that chemicals, I think.
No, oh my goodness. But that's why Zoom is so amazing, right? Like you literally, you know, I don't have to do the hair in my back. I literally don't have to.
You don't have to put on pants.
I don't have to wear. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you actually say that because Rachel kind of joke around, like, you know, are you wearing pants right now?
I am wearing pants.
That's going to be our new icebreaker question, actually, for any guest is, are you wearing pants? What's on your lap right now? Is there, anyway.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I mean, there's so much research out now that says, you know, trauma really does or can stem from in the womb, like in the womb, early, you know, and I think that until more recently, we haven't really been thinking that way.
Actually, two kinds in the womb. You can have trauma that's you know, genetic. So there's the, what do you call it? Like there's the epigenetics and the fact that you can get trauma inherited for generations, and also then there's trauma that could happen in the womb, like when you're. So it's like two.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and we've talked about like, and on the epigenetic side of things, we actually had an episode not that long ago with Jeannie Becker is a Canadian fashion icon, and her parents were Holocaust survivors. Wow. And our grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So we had a specialist, a intergenerational psychologist specialist from New York, actually from Mount Sinai Hospital or University, come on, and we talked about the trauma that's passed down generation to generation and how much that affects us. And with that being said, because you said you have a Jewish background or you are Jewish, we're not really that practicing, to be honest. It's just more of like it's in the bloodline, I guess, so to speak.
It's more cultural. We're ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, me too.
But how did that play a part in your upbringing? It was
I mean, I think culturally, you know, just there's an openness actually, and I think there's, I mean, I don't want to generalize about Jews, but I'd say that generally, generally more liberal and more open-minded, and also focused on education and like really learning. And I don't know, at least that's the way my parents were. They were, you know. They were they weren't Holocaust survivors. My grandparents, they came over earlier to the US. So my grandparents, I think three of my four grandparents were born in the US actually. Oh. So I mean, my one grandmother, the one who was a yogi actually, she came over from more like Poland, Russia area when she was a small child, which was very traumatic for her. And actually she says that most of her yoga and spiritual work was about resolving that trauma of that journey on that boat ride, which was so horrific. Yeah. And then like basically really struggling, almost being homeless, you know, when she arrived, and really struggling in the US as a child, you know, as a young Jewish immigrant. So you have that. But otherwise, they were older, you know, they've been here longer. And I think a lot of the Jews in the US rejected it. They didn't want it. They were, you know, during that, there's a strong anti-Semitic time. So I think they had to hide the fact that they were Jewish. My mother was an actress and really had to pretend that she wasn't Jewish in order to get work.
Did she change her? Actually, that's interesting because
she changed her name.
I was just going to ask because my grandfather did the same thing when he came from, and interesting you said Poland, because both my father's grandparents were Holocaust survivors from Poland.
And my grandfather too.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it was, my last name was Rosenzweig, but it sounded too ethnic or too Jewy. So it's now Rosen. So that was the first thing that he did when he came here. So yeah. It's
a lot of Jews did. A lot of people had to hide, you know, and a lot of Jews could, you know, you could hide if you changed your name or something.
That's true. And another thing that I think is very common is, I mean, you said Jews being very open, but also question everything.
Yeah.
You're like that, but that's a big, and I think that's a big part of the religion though, too, is, you know, always questioning, always having conversations, even about the Testament, like the, you know, all those kinds of things. It's constantly
questioning. I know, even like Passover is questions, right? It's true. My husband is not Jewish, and I have to say that I didn't realize how much it impacted me in terms of our relationship, and the way that the way that I want to relate to people is often in that open, challenging, questioning way, which is just the way I was raised. You know, if there's a problem, you talk about it.
Yeah.
You talk about people, but you also talk about them to their face too. You know, it's like you talk about it, everything with everyone, and with him, it was just much more like, you don't talk about it. You don't talk about feelings. You don't talk about other people. Like, it was just much more, I think, repressed. I mean, I think there's probably good and bad, but definitely, yeah, it's so interesting to have that. I feel lucky, actually, to have that background.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is funny that you talked about like just having the polar opposite almost of marriage, because I married a non-Jew as well. Yeah. But there's something like, you know, when you get together with Jews, it's like, okay, I know maybe this sounds bad, but oh, there's my people. Like, I get it. You know, there's definitely some sort of commonality with personality and those kinds of things that it's just, yeah, it's so inherent, you know? So, yeah.
No, you know, you're right. It's true. I had a conversation with someone for about an hour the other day, and I knew I could figure out that they were also identified as lesbian, but then we realized we were both Jewish, and we're like, well, no kidding, got the gay and the Jewish card, right? So, so one thing I wanted to ask you as we start to bring our conversation to not a conclusion, but for now, is there anything that you wanted to share as a parting words, any wisdom? And then in addition, things that are coming up for you, as you mentioned, your book, maybe other parts of your training, accessible yoga, giving that opportunity for you to share that now, if you like.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I appreciate this conversation, and that we got to, I mean, thanks for asking about me personally. I really appreciate that. But I really enjoyed talking about the yoga business quote world or industry, and I'm just, I guess I really love that people are questioning it. That's really the main thing. You know, yoga is about asking questions too. Actually, I think as Jews, that's why yoga is so appealing, because I think yoga really is like all about questioning and analyzing yourself and analyzing the world. And so I think really I would just encourage people to keep that, you know, analytical, questioning perspective as a yoga practitioner. And like, I don't know, the other thing I would just say about my work is I really hope that everyone can make yoga their own. Like, I think part of it's like ownership too. So I don't know how to say that exactly, but just that I'm really interested in sharing, not just sharing yoga, but sharing the power of the practice, and saying that we all have access to that.
Yeah.
It's not like someone else has something. It's not that celebrity teacher or whoever has something that you don't have, actually. They've just found their practice. And so I think each of us can do that. Each of us can kind of find our own way in to the teachings.
Yeah.
To find, I sometimes say, find the inner teacher, like find that voice within you, you know, that can help direct you in your life. I think that's what's so amazing about yoga, that self-empowering, is that the word? And that's really what I'm interested in these days, you know, sharing power.
Well, it's like you are your own guru. Yes. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. And I think that even, I know that the masters or gurus out there, like the real ones, will say that they'll never stop learning, number one. never stop learning, and they probably won't even call themselves a master because they're always learning. So how can you completely master something if it's a continue anyway?
No, exactly. But I think what you just said, we say that as an expression, the guru is within us, but I actually think we can explore that more.
Yeah.
As a practice, like how do you make that your practice?
Yes.
And how do you differentiate those different voices in your head? Because we have a lot, I do, have a lot of them. And it's like becoming more discerning about which ones are helpful, which ones are not helpful, that I think that's the key. To connect with the voice that's really going to help you, kind of your intuition maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rachel, do you want to wrap it up with what we normally love to ask our guests at the end of our conversations?
Sure, but I also just wanted to ask, so currently if somebody wanted to train with you, or what do you have going on right now? Like, and we'll definitely in the show notes, we'll put, your website and all those kinds of things, your Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, I do one training basically. Like I have one thing that I offer, and that's the accessible yoga training. It's now online. I've just really tried to focus on that. Like I said, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. Like I'm on a mission to like train yoga teachers to make yoga accessible. And so like we were talking about earlier, it's this 30-hour training. I'm offering it again. I don't know how soon this will come out, but I have one January 22nd is my next one.
Okay. This will come out before then.
Yeah. And
that's
so
great.
People can find out about that. Yeah.
Great.
That's about it. And also, I should say one more thing. We have the nonprofit has ambassadors. So, you're welcome to be an ambassador for Accessible Yoga.
Cool.
It's a membership program where you pay, or there's scholarships if you want, and you get lots of great stuff. Like this year, we're doing monthly community forums on different topics around accessibility in yoga. And so anyone who's an ambassador gets free access to those, or you can join. And so it's like trying to bring people together interested in different subtopics within this work. Like actually the one we're doing at the end of January is yoga for mental health and trauma.
Wow.
It's a community forum. There'll be people talking about it, and then there's just sharing among the people who come. So we try to make it interactive.
Oh, I love that.
And then throughout the year, we'll do one each month focusing on different topics like yoga for yoga and racism, yoga and for larger bodies, yoga for incarcerated populations, yoga for kids with disabilities, stuff like that.
And do you have to be a yoga teacher to attend?
No, anyone can come. And like I said, you can go to one, you can pay to attend one, or you can become an ambassador for Accessible Yoga and then have access to all of them.
Okay, very cool.
And that's through the nonprofit, through accessibleyoga.org. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. And then our last extremely serious question. Can you tell I'm being serious about this? Is if you were a fruit juice, what would, just because getting juicy, if you were fruit juice, what would you be and why? And it doesn't have to be a fruit juice. I just realized it could be any kind of juice, so vegetable, fruit. First thing that comes to mind. And
well, actually, what comes to mind is that I'm fruity, like that being gay is like fruit, right? Isn't that what we call ourselves?
Yes,
so I
exactly.
think I already am juice.
Yes.
And I'm Jewish too, so I fit in with your podcast. Do I have to? So, but is there a kind of juice? I don't know. I would say I love gardening, and probably I would be a mixture of some root vegetable and a fruit mixed together. That's my goal, to try to be grounded and kind of out there. So.
Oh, I like that.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's a good answer. I like that
That's
one.
a good question. No one's ever asked me that before.
That's what we aim to aspire to be, is to catch people off guard without making them too uncomfortable.
Are you wearing pants? What kind of fruit juice are you? Okay, done.
Yeah, done. Exactly. Done.
That's great. Thanks.
All right. You're welcome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jivana. It's so wonderful to finally have some time to connect with you in a more personal way, and for Rachel and I to have a chance to share that with you as well. Best of luck with everything that's happening, with everything you're working on. And when it is safe to do so, I would love to have you come into Vancouver, and we could hopefully set up a training in person in one of our studios or a shared space.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me and for asking me such silly and interesting questions.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Jivana. It's so nice to meet you, and stay safe. I know that's such a obvious thing to say, but got to keep saying it. Stay safe, stay as sane as possible, and all the best.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.